There was a moment when Rush might have quietly disappeared. No farewell tour, no grand ending, just silence. And what happened next involves two people you might not expect: Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. Before I get into the story, let's listen to something that Geddy Lee had to say about Led Zeppelin right here.
It was a life-changing experience. We sat there in the second row, and Jimmy Page didn't walk on stage. He floated on stage. I'm sure there was a cloud under his feet. And it was such a profoundly intense rock experience. And the rafters were literally shaking, and plaster was literally falling off the ceiling. They really brought the house down. And it was a kind of rock music that we had never really heard or felt in that way.
So, in the late 1990s, Neil Peart suffered devastating personal losses, his daughter and then his wife. And for Rush, everything stopped. No tours, no new music, no clear future. For years, it wasn't even certain the band would ever come back. And if you know rock history, you know that sometimes bands don't. When John Bonham died in 1980, Led Zeppelin made a decision that shocked a lot of people. They ended the band completely. Their reasoning was simple. Without Bonham, it wasn't Led Zeppelin anymore. And that decision has defined their legacy ever since. Now, fast forward to the early 2000s. As Rush slowly began to find their way back, something unexpected happened. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant met with Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. These were musicians who had lived their own version of devastation and loss, and what they told Rush was simple but incredibly important. You have to move forward, you have to rejoin life, and sooner is better than later. It wasn't pressure, it wasn't advice about music, it was something deeper than that. Let's listen in here to something that Alex Lifeson said about Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin as an influence on him as a musician.
They were probably the biggest influences on us. Certainly Jimmy Page was the biggest influence on me. I loved his playing, and I loved everything that he represented, his look, his style of playing, the looseness in his playing. I really learned an awful lot from him, probably more than anyone else.
So clearly Led Zeppelin was one of the most important bands to both Geddy and Alex, and we know how much of an influence on Neil Peart John Bonham was. So this wasn't just about one band talking to another. This is one path speaking to another. Led Zeppelin chose to end. Rush chose eventually to continue on with Neil Peart, and somewhere in that moment you have to wonder if hearing from Led Zeppelin from people who had already made a choice in the past helped Rush understand what their own choice needed to be. So, did Jimmy Page and Robert Plant save Rush? Well, not exactly. Rush didn't come back because someone told them to, but sometimes at the lowest point, what matters isn't direction, it's permission. Permission to keep going, permission to create again, and permission to even become something new. And that's why this story matters right now, at this point in history, because what we're seeing today, with Annika Niles stepping into the live lineup of Rush, isn't just a continuation, it's the result of a decision that was made years ago to keep moving forward, not by replacing Neil Peart, but by allowing the band to evolve without him, and that's not an easy thing to do. In fact, most bands don't even try. This is what makes Rush different. They didn't try to recreate the past. They didn't try to prove that they were the same. They chose something harder to carry the spirit forward while accepting that it would feel different. And in a strange way, that might be the most honest tribute possible. So when you watch Rush today, you're not just seeing a band playing music. You're seeing the result of a choice. A choice to continue, a choice to evolve, a choice that at one point wasn't guaranteed. And maybe the real question is, if they hadn't been encouraged to take that step by Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, would we still be watching them at all? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Welcome, members. Most people think that the hardest part of drumming a song Tom Sawyer is the intro groove, or maybe the pre-synth breakdown, but that's not it. The real test for any drummer stepping into this song, especially for someone like Annika Niles, is what happens under Music Guru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10 1,000 subscribers.